Okay, greetings everyone. This is the Washington State Building Co-Council IBC Technical Advisory Group for Thursday, December 4th, 2025. Could we please take roll?
Yes. Todd Byerther,
Here.
Roger Haringa, not seeing online. Joe Mayo,
Present.
thank you. Che Fortaleza, not seeing online. Tim Woodard,
Present.
thank you. Steve Belzak, Steve, I saw you unmute and go back on, but I didn't hear you. Same scenario, not hearing you, but I'll acknowledge you are as present. Lance Dahl,
Here.
Hoyt Jeter, not seeing online. Sean Karlstrom, not seeing online. Todd Sullivan, not seeing online. Bill Mybush, not online. Brian Horseman, not online. Josh Mergens,
Here.
thank you. Trent Tinney, not online. Michael Shaw,
Here.
thank you. Brett Conway, not seeing online. Michael Barth,
I'm here.
thank you. Leah Summer,
Here.
Paul Clark,
Here.
Andy Leonto, not seeing online. And with that, we do have a quorum.
Okay. Let's take an opportunity. Anyone else like to be recognized from the public? Okay, go ahead, Patrick.
Yes, thank you. This is Patrick Hanks with the Building Industry Association of Washington.
Welcome. Aaron.
Yes, this is Aaron Scott with Pallet Shelters. Thank
Welcome
you.
back.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, thank you everyone for hanging in there as we sprint towards the finish line. I promise we're getting there, even though we added one more item to our agenda today. So with that, can I hear a motion to review and approve this agenda, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda. This is Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
I'll second that. This is Paul.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Any other edits? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved. Item 3 is to review and approve minutes if we have them
We've
for
got
November
them.
6th and 20th.
So I've got the November 6th meeting minutes.
Okay. As Dustin is scrolling, can we please hear a motion to approve?
This is Tim. I'll go ahead and approve or make a motion to approve the minutes.
And before us is the 11/20.
Okay, can we hear a second, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Paul. Okay,
Steve, I see you unmuting there. Are you we're still not hearing you on your microphone if you were trying to speak.
okay. All right, motion is to approve these 2 minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Okay, we're going to jump into an item that got added to our agenda on child care centers. Dustin, I think you're probably best qualified to.
Yeah, we should probably be able to move this one here pretty quick, at least for today. I'd like to maybe revisit 2 items. So at the November BFRW committee, we had a petition for rulemaking on our agenda, and the petition was rescinded by that proponent with the understanding that we were going to develop an opinion, and also a motion was made to develop code language to insert into the 2024 code. So that was discussed, and we were kind of on consensus at the BFRW committee meeting. It's just that instead of doing petition and emergency rulemaking, it took a different turn. And so we're here. So for today's meeting documents, I have uploaded a opinion draft and also a language proposal that's been modified since the BFRW committee meeting to really reflect the content of what was decided on at that meeting, which is the option number 3. This proposal doesn't have the options on there anymore. It just has that option number 3 drafted in there. So I was hoping to get a motion on the opinion, make sure that we're happy with the wording there, and move that up to the BFRW committee. Hopefully get that approved in the January BFRW. And then I wanted to just introduce the language proposal that I'd like to potentially insert into the CR 102 document for the 2024 codes. So I'll open up the opinion document first.
And just so
Uh,
everyone's tracking,
oh.
sorry to Dustin, this was a complicated discussion. The BFW, the committee or the council has the ability to approve these opinions. So the action taken by the committee was to request input, right?
Yeah, so it didn't say send this opinion down to the tag, but it did say send the rulemaking down to the tag for consideration. And because this is drafted in time for this meeting, I just have it up here for us to consider. And
Gotcha.
it's related to RCW 19-27600, which was passed in the 2024 legislative session. And at the time of its drafting and passing, our interpretation was that it wouldn't require any rulemaking. And then Ken Brulette came forward and said there's been some confusion over how to apply this. And the discussion was that fire barriers are needed to delineate a smaller fire area so that, occupant loads can be calculated. And so the language that we have here in the answer is exactly what is drafted into the code language document that we'll look at right after this one. So this is, if there's any edits to this before we send it to the BFRW committee, I'd be happy to hear if there's any comments on this.
Okay, that helps me remember. Now, does anyone have any questions just on that process, what we're doing here?
This is Tim. Just a quick question. I mean, my immediate thought was, well, what rating do we use? There is a table in the IBC that delineates what hour fire barrier you're required in order to determine your fire areas. Should we also reference that table, or is it just implied because we're creating a fire area that you already have to use that table?
It's a good question and that I hadn't considered. Our original petitioner and, draftsperson who really didn't want his name all over this, but he's here. Ken, do you have a comment on that by chance?
Yeah, you can put a pointer to it if you felt it's necessary.
Do we have a table number by chance, Tim?
Well, you want to be careful. Yeah, never mind. Go ahead.
I'll pull it up and I'll get you that in just a second.
Okay. And so while Tim's pulling that up, it's probably a good time to pop open the Child Care Center's language proposal. And this is proposed for both the IBC and IFC. These are language sections that are duplicated in both of our WACs and the codes.
And I'm sorry, it was Dustin, since you made the announcement, since I withdrew the petition, I would appreciate if you didn't have my name all over this then.
Okay. Let me start pulling that out now, and I'll make sure it's not on there in the future.
Okay, I have that table number for the 2021 code. You'll have to look up what the reference is to 2024 if you want it placed in there.
Okay.
It's tables 707.3.10.
Okay. It's not more than one table, just the one?
Just the one.
Okay. Ken, is there any more identifying information for you in the bottom of this at all? I don't see any.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, I'll read through it and just double check after today. All right, so back to the opinion language. Uh, we've got the pointer to the table. Thank you, Tim, for picking that up for me real quick. Any other comments on this? And if there aren't, I'd be happy to take this to the BFRW.
You'll need to reference that the tables in the building code are not the fire code, since your code sections both.
With those modifications, this is Tim. I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve this opinion.
Okay. Is that what we're looking for, Dustin?
Yeah, I'm looking to
Recommendation?
I'm taking the approve the opinion to mean approve this and recommend it to the BFRW.
Correct. Is there a second?
This is Josh Morgans. I'll second.
Okay. So is there any other discussion or deliberation or questions on it? If you're still not sure what we're doing here. Okay, the motion is to recommend this opinion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, with that vote, this opinion is recommended to the BFW.
Okay, so with that one, I need just a note to myself to come through. And do we want to still, we'll need to point to those same tables in the highlighted sections here. Is that an accurate desire by this group?
Maybe you can walk us through a little bit more, give a little more.
Okay,
That's
so this is the code proposal for this change. There's two locations where the language is relevant. We got 903.2.3, which is where it indicates the sprinkler locations that are required. And we're adding a new one that's going to be state amendment only, and it's for childcare centers. And we're looking to add that same language that was in that draft opinion. And I'm asking if the change for the table reference and that we'd have to make a difference between the fire code and the building code here. But I'm asking if we want to insert the reference here. Ken, you have your hand up?
Yes. The discussions that we had previously was, where should this be? And the discussion was also putting this into the existing building code, and not just the building code and the fire code, but in the international existing building code. Because this is what that was brought up for, was, again, existing buildings that all of a sudden put a daycare facility inside. So I think you should be looking at putting this language, some type of language in the existing building code, if it's a pointer or whatever, but everything should really be handled through the existing building code for this subject, and not necessarily the fire and building code here.
I'll go ahead. I had two issues, and then, or one issue, and then maybe a comment for Ken. So The one thing here, like when I read through your draft opinion, it immediately stuck out to me, well, what hour fire barrier are we looking for? Did we want to make them separated occupancies? Because there's a separate table for that that says a fire barrier in between these types of occupancies. But then by this dictating of that fire area, there really is only one table to determine separate fire areas. So if we wanted to come up with language that didn't reference a specific table, but instead said, to create its own fire area, then we'd already be going to that table. And then we don't got to do specific references, or I just need to hear what the intent of this code section was. Are we wanting to make it less restrictive than what the current building code is? Because if we're making it less restrictive, it should be a less hour rating than what is currently in the building code that would allow you to do this exact same thing by creating it as its own fire area.
Maybe it
And
would
then
help if I show the RCW as well in there, because initially we determined that this wouldn't require any rulemaking, and so we've got some confusion stemming from this, couple sentences here. So the intent is to allow some clarity within the code language to give the building code officials and fire officials who might be looking at this a good method to comply with this and provide some sort of relief to the child care centers that are going into these existing buildings. So I guess this was kind of considered to be going to happen at churches and places like that. But in the discussion, we're talking about strip malls and other locations where the adjacent occupancies might have required separations that might not be there from a E occupancy or the I-4 occupancy as well. So I think the intent was to try to just clarify how you can apply this within an existing footprint and allow somebody to do this use without necessarily needing to upgrade the building to do it.
Okay, so if that's the intent, that there's relief, then I don't even know if what we just made on the opinion is the right answer, because currently, if you separate it off into its own fire area, then it's regulated as an individual fire area. And this is where I understand where probably the opinion was we didn't need to make any modifications, is you can already do what we just wrote in the opinion. You can already separate it into its own fire area and then just use that fire area in determining the building's, sprinkler system, alarm systems, most everything else. The existing building code has a section also that says if you put in one of these fire barriers, you can look at it as an individual building. So that gets you to a point where oftentimes you can not have to evaluate the entire building for the like square footage requirements based on construction type and everything else. So if we are looking for a relief, and that table pretty much always requires a 2-hour separation, then maybe we should look at doing something less and, just requiring a 1-hour separation or a 1-hour fire barrier. And that would be a lot easier to retrofit into these buildings. And then in regards to Ken's comment, I mean, the only thing I would say is the existing building code pretty much exclusively references the building code for sprinklers. It says, if required by the building code, then you have to add a sprinkler system. So I don't know really if it's going to be beneficial to try to add something into the existing building code just specific to this, as everything else just references the building code for when it needs the sprinkler system.
Ken, did you want to respond first before Hoyt?
Yeah, I do. Tim, Ardell and I've been talking about this during the last meeting. So section 1011 of the International Existing Building Code, change of occupancy classification, that's where this would apply when we have our existing buildings that want to convert an area into this child care center. Then in 1011.2 has fire protection system requirements, and then 1011.2.1 also helps out with lesser requirements in like a 2-hour fire barrier. So that's why we were thinking that this would be the best application for the substitute Senate bill, what everybody should be using, and not just using the table in the building code, because again, this is how we should be addressing the situation using the existing building code, and that does give us some relief. Because then it's just talking about that the sprinkler system to be provided based on the new occupancy accords, blah, 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 within the area of the change of occupancy and areas of the building not separated horizontally vertically from the change of occupancy by one of the following. It gives all the different ideas of how to separate it out. I just think that maybe we're going too quickly right now. We're trying to put this in the code. I really think we should be looking at the existing building code and just making sure everybody is applying it the same way. And the existing building code is probably the right place to put this. And I just don't know if you have access to pull that up or just into that section and just walk everybody through exactly what the scenario was. I have an existing church and I want to put a daycare in it. So I'm going to change the occupancy classification for that area.
Ken, what section of the IEBC am I looking at?
I believe you said 1011.2.
1011 is change of occupancy classification. That's the 1011. You want to start it in 1011. 1011. Yeah, 1011 at the top. And then you scroll down to where it talks about 1011.2 for fire protection, and then the sprinkler system, because that's what this was all based upon. And I think this is the right application that we should be looking at this. And any proposed changes would be in this section.
Okay, well, we're looking at that. Hoyt, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, two things. Sorry, I was a little bit late. I just wanted to make sure you guys knew I was on.
Okay.
I had another thing I had to do, but I kind of agree with Ken. I was listening to some of it. I didn't hear everybody's talk on that, but I do kind of agree with Ken where to put it. So,
Okay. Michael, you want to add something?
Yeah, I too, I agree with Ken that it belongs in the IEBC section. In the way it's written in the proposal there, I do have it's a challenge to put it in an exception to a fire sprinkler rule that then triggers other provisions. So it's more, where I have issue is kind of the structure of the way it's written. If it needs to be added as an exception, then it should be phrased as an additional exception, not just kind of tagged onto the end with different requirements. So, but I also think that it really should be back in the IEBC. I haven't looked at it enough to really, develop an opinion or a suggestion as to how to fix it. Only that it doesn't really work, in my opinion, the way it's presented there.
Thank you, Michael. Go ahead, Hoyt. Is your hand still up?
yeah, I just didn't lower it. Sorry about that.
Okay. So, Dustin, sorry, my memory's failing me. What exactly was the request from the BRFW?
The request was to develop an opinion. There was two motions made. One was to develop the opinion, and then the second motion was to ask the IBC tag to develop 2024 code language. And it was based on the options that was presented to the BFRW, and they liked option 3, which created this new section instead of inserting another exception underneath this one. And so, with the discussion of where it belongs in the IEBC or here was had as well. And it's, we don't have to, we're not so close to being on the edge of the precipice that we need to make a decision on this today, even for the opinion. But, it was kind of more my plan to introduce this here today, get a little bit of discussion, and then make maybe some more movement on it at a subsequent meeting. And we don't have a lot of time at these meetings, and so I'm not sure where we want to go with this at this point. But I think
Okay.
folks on the call probably want to digest a little bit more before making any big movements.
Okay. But it sounds like even though the BRFW might have recommended this option, this needs to be the recommendation of the tag, the direction we want to take this. So
Correct.
So it sounds like we're leaning more towards the IEBC. Is there anyone who's disagrees with that? If we're to direct the Dustin and staff to go develop that. Go ahead, Hoyt, and then Tim.
Yeah, I just have a real quick thing. I'm just reading on the number 10. I thought when you're in the IRC, we amended this out, but the IRC, just for people know, assumes that the buildings are sprinkled. That's how the I codes were actually developed. And I notice here we say an automatic shall not be required for 1 and 2 family construction in the International Residential Code. This is what we've changed for existing. I just wanted to just kind of give that to the people on here. The IRC was kind of assuming they started being sprinkling. It was kind of pushed in the long run. Just an FYI. I hate it when they do. I just hate the existing building code. I wish it would just stay in the IBC and not go back to the residential code. But I know that's not an option. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Tim.
So I think as far as, opinions and getting back to the other committee, my mind still goes to I feel like we need to hear what our objective is. And if it is to reduce requirements, then I think I'm totally on board with what Ken's pointing out about this section. We could add in a different exception or something to that effect. That then reduces the requirements for an existing building to be less than the table. But on the opinion, I think the reason why I was adamant that we needed the table in there for that is I feel like, again, that is currently what you can do to do exactly what's there. And so I know I'm repeating myself, but it's kind of one of those things where if we want to reduce the requirements, let's put it in the IABC and reduce what the requirement is. Otherwise, we have to reference the table and keep it the same.
Okay. Gordon?
Yeah, hi, Gordon Hicks with the Seattle Department of Construction and Inspections. Just wanted to point out if we're looking at putting things in the existing building code for change of occupancy, there's also the prescriptive, right, section, chapter 5 or 506 for change of occupancy. So you wouldn't want to only have it in chapter 10 of the EBC, but also in that chapter 5.
Okay, I see a thumbs up.
That's all I had. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I think I understood that, but I might need to look into that a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it just because there's the work area methods of the existing building code, which is from chapter 6 onward, but chapter 5 is a prescriptive path that people can choose to follow the existing building code. And so if you're talking about changes to the sections that deal with changes of occupancy in the existing building code, you'd want to get it in both the work area in chapter 10 and in 506 of the prescriptive chapter.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. Okay, so do we feel like we have a direction? Maybe that's all we're achieving today is a direction for Dustin and staff to bring this back to us at a next meeting. And if so, that I'm hearing we're also going to hold on the opinion and moving that forward.
We could definitely hold on that opinion. We need to have an amendatory or another vote on that opinion to bring it back after that vote. But yeah, I'm not sure if I have enough information yet to draft what we have in here. I'm thinking if we put these out there And if folks have ideas on how to draft this in there, we could do that, or I can take ideas and start drafting them in if people want to submit them to me.
Okay, and then may I ask Ken, since you've been here through all these discussions, is this, are we spinning our wheels or is this what you anticipated?
Well, a little bit of both. I'm a realist here, and I'm just walking through the scenario of architect submits plans, says I'm going to change the use in existing building, wants to use the international existing building code. The international existing building code says, hey, go to chapter 9 of the IBC and look at the thresholds. The thresholds for daycare centers is based on occupant load. We put something in here like what's proposed to say, hey, when you're determining occupant load, you still have to provide that fire barrier per that table. Okay, they do the fire barrier, they get that occupant load. That then determines if we have to put sprinklers in or not. The question is if they don't put a fire barrier in, and we are then including the occupant load for both areas, the church or whatever other use is, and the daycare. We include that occupant load, that puts us over our threshold. We then go back over to chapter 1011, existing building code, and then it says, hey, you only need to provide that fire sprinkler system in the area of the change of occupancy. And I just want to make sure if that's what we're looking at, is that if I put a daycare center in and I have to sprinkler, can I get away with only providing the sprinklers in that daycare center, so then I could just maybe do a limited sprinkler system off of the domestic plumbing and now have to pull a full underground in for a brand new sprinkler system? Can I do that or not? And that's the realistic approach to this that I'm looking at. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Michael, go ahead.
The other challenge with the verbiage in the opinion is not all child care center spaces are going to require a fire barrier. So we're talking about, essentially saying, it's required to put a fire barrier, but we're not addressing the situation. What if the building is already sprinkled? What if this is within an existing building that, maybe not a church, maybe it's a school, and we're adding a child care center. So there's no fire barrier required because it would be an E to an E. So I think it just makes it difficult from an interpretation standpoint to say that, because then even then it could be sorry, jumbling over my words here. Even then it can be misconstrued to apply to other situations where, a fire barrier, for example, would not even be required.
Okay. Well, okay, we got a bunch of hands popping up there. Let's go through everyone. Then I think we probably want to table this, and then Dustin and I will see each other in person tomorrow. Maybe we can strategize a little bit on what to bring back and get input from people. But go ahead, Hoyt.
Yeah, I'll be real short. I just wanted to say, I agree with Mike on that. It's
Okay.
we're confusing this too much.
Okay. Is it Pellin?
Hi, Richard Pellinger, SDCI. One quick question I had. We have language for the fire barrier. Shouldn't there also be language in regards to vertical separation as well, so horizontal assembly?
Boy, we haven't talked about that, have we? To anyone's memory?
No, it's all been kind of anticipated in single-story buildings that nobody's brought up if it comes in, if we need to worry about
Interesting.
floors around it.
Well, okay, good point. Thank you. Yep. Tim?
So on that last point that was stated, I think he's correct. We need to think about that. But I think when you look at that table, it's going to say for a fire barrier definition, it has to go from here to here, and then it specifies if it ends at a horizontal assembly, that horizontal assembly has to be the same rating or more. So I think we're covered actually.
Okay.
But then the other thing in regards to Steve's comment on unnecessarily requiring these walls, you have to refer back to the question in the opinion too, which it's asking specifically how much the occupant load do we determine to be in the fire area. So unless you separate it with the fire barrier to create the fire. So if you're in a case where you don't need the sprinkler system, then you don't have to worry about it because you can calculate the whole fire area occupant load into that equation. So yeah, I think it's just hard because all of us are coming in kind of a little bit blind to this concept being shown it. So just
Yeah.
other things to keep in mind.
Okay, well, maybe we're at a point where do we want to table this so we can get to our next topic, and then Dustin and I will circle back tomorrow, and then if you wake up in the middle of the night with the solution, can you email Dustin, please? And then we'll bring it back in front of everyone at our next meeting. Is that okay?
Yeah, and speaking to Dustin's comment, if I need to make a motion to withdraw our
Well,
original motion to approve the opinion, I'll do that, and then also make a motion to table this.
I was wondering if we just table both. Is that a sufficient motion?
I'm okay with that if Dustin says it's
Okay.
okay.
I second that.
I
Well,
mean,
I don't know if that's allowed. I assume that does the trick.
I would assume, I mean, so we made a motion to pass the opinion. I think the correct wording would just be to withdraw the approval of the
Okay.
opinion and table the opinion plus the 2024 code language to the next meeting.
Okay, would someone like to move that?
I'd like to move that. So
Okay, thank you, Hoyt.
And I'll second that.
And Tim will second. Thank you. Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so we've withdrawn that original motion on the recommendation and then tabled these two items. Okay, thank you all. We'll get this sorted out and come back in a very efficient way the next time. So thank you for that discussion. Okay, we have about 20 minutes. Let's get back into the emergency shelter, make a little progress on that. Just to remind everyone, we're trying to wrap these up. I'm kind of hopeful we can do it in the next few meetings and then kind of check this off. But let's see where we are. Dustin, do you want to maybe, if anyone's from Seattle's here and like to kind of go over what Ardell and Micah were proposing in email?
Okay. So we got our topic summary. We got the bed calculations from the last time we discussed in there added to the list. I didn't have any other topics to add based on that conversation from the last meeting. So Ardell and Micah were talking that they had some folks from SDCI who might be interested in talking on this topic. They also told me that they wouldn't be available for the meeting today. Are there folks from SDCI who are here prepared to talk on temporary emergency shelters and what you guys do in Seattle?
Not that I'm aware of today, no.
Okay.
Okay.
So
No
we'll
worries.
schedule that then.
Yeah, so I think we're anticipating that so the next time we'll be discussing temporary emergency shelters will be in December. If I can uncover my calendar, it's going to be on the 18th. We'll be discussing temporary emergency shelters again. And so we're anticipating some folks from SDCI to attend and discuss further what they have going on there. So the other thing that we were talking about needing to go over at the last meeting was reviewing the California Appendix P. We have also posted for the meeting the Seattle shelter guidance and some comments from Steve Belzak, and then the Tacoma ordinance as well. And so, but I thought it sounded on my review of that last meeting that we need to hit the Appendix P from California and discuss that, and then we'll probably be primed well for our next meeting. And I'm not sure how long this will take to go over Appendix P, but I'm prepared to pop it open.
I think we should do that, and I think that's what we'll probably accomplish today, right? And then 20 minutes we have.
And then Aaron, you have your hand up while this is opening.
Yes, a quick question on this table here, line 11, the bed count, 0 to 50. Has there been any thought for kind of a nuanced code for single or double occupancy, where it's much smaller. You only have one or two people. You're talking, less than 100 square foot, maybe, 70 square foot or 64 square foot. Seems kind of a different animal than something that holds 50 people.
So this would be more relative to the pallet shelters that you guys do. And then also, I mean, I'm not sure if this was the concept that I recall from the last meeting is that these were for the existing buildings using these types of thresholds. Um,
Roger
and
that.
I was hearing your comment, I'm thinking maybe the thresholds might be similar for like the villages that go up because it's not just the units you guys use, but I can easily add in the line for the 1 to 2, occupant structures that would maybe cover those, tents and pallet shelter type stuff that are not going into existing buildings.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Hoyt.
Just real quick. Yeah, this was for dealing with existing buildings, just FYI. So it
So
wasn't
where
for like the 10 structures.
did we intend to have a topic for, um, I mean, we've talked about it obviously, but where is it showing up on our topic list to discuss villages, if that's the correct term? Or have we not addressed that yet?
We were kind of
It's
on the threshold of getting there at the last meeting.
Okay, because I don't know that even 1 and 2 might be the number, but it is a whole different topic area. And okay, we'll get it added there. Thank you, Aaron. Okay, let Dustin catch up.
And some fancy letters in there. Okay, so I added a couple different lines in there, modified some. But we added in temporary structures, 1 to 2 occupants structures, and then I put in here also temporary structure villages.
Okay,
And then we
we'll
have
get that.
existing building beds 0 to 50, 50 to 100 and 100 plus. All
Okay.
right. So here is the California Building Code, Appendix P. This table talks about the different agencies within California that are the adopting authority. It's not really relevant to our discussion for this one. This, and I haven't had a chance to really dive into this, but this might be a good organizational template for what we're looking for our work as well. And so I guess I'd make the call. Is anybody here familiar with this appendix? Because I haven't had a chance to familiarize myself with it.
Yeah, I've actually gone through it. I've done building code reviews down in California, so I'm familiar with the OSHPOT. I did look at this. This was a while ago though, so it's been a while. So um, just FYI, I am
Is
familiar
there
with.
is there anything in this appendix that you would, does this cover both existing buildings and like the temporary emergency shelter buildings as well?
What I remember is yes, this was supposed to cover both. So um,
So if you scroll
that's
down to 104, right, we
yeah,
start getting into emergency
just some
sleeping
more
cabins.
details. Those are just definitions. Yeah. So there it is right there, existing buildings. So that's what they had to use it in an emergency situation. And you can see here exemptions tents. So the tents are actually more for a very short term thing. So
I guess the emergency sleeping cabin wouldn't be the same as a tent. Or is there a specific tents section in here?
no, but what the intent is, if you go in the disasters that have happened, if you go in and you just do any Google search, and especially they had this in Turkey, but obviously there are different rules there. But it's basically when you put up a tent, basically to keep people out of the elements. It's a physical tent. It's not a built structure. And this is for very fast getting people into shelters as fast as you possibly can from a natural disaster. So,
But I think the question
And
when you read through this is that the tents and the hard-sided cabins are different, and then you see it show up in different places, like in terms of
yeah, that's
exceptions
correct.
and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. They're different. So sorry about that. I didn't understand the question.
does this require the declaration of crisis?
That's the thing. Yes, this is required. So what this is a crisis has happened, and you have a declaration in California that's been there. What I thought you were saying is when this may be something where people could stay a little bit longer. But yeah, it is when in California, it's when they actually declare a disaster. So by the governor.
And I seem to recall the discussion at the last meeting being to empower the local officials to make their declarations to serve for the need for these types of structures and uses.
Yeah, that's what Sue Kaufman here, the building official who has retired, that we were working on. I've done a lot in Tacoma. That was what we were. That's what we're hoping for. I'm just telling you that's how it was done in California. So, um, just letting you know that was it.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm just
hoping we
trying
could
to
do this.
maybe identify the differences between what our mission that we're trying to outline and what California might have on their books and
Yeah,
might point
I
us.
hope we. Yeah, I hope we could do this stuff without me personally. Okay, this is not something, and then also here in Tacoma, representing Tacoma too, is where this does not have to have a declaration. It, if an emergency happens, you could use it in either cases because we have homeless people we like to put up, and we have some rules we do in Tacoma for that. And I'm hoping that's the case, but I don't want to force things on other people. I think this is a very good system, what they had laid out here personally. So what California has laid out.
Dustin, maybe we can scroll up, and Aaron has a comment here, but I think, we just look at the definitions, and now that we've all, read through this a little, I mean, this kind of, it's pretty comprehensive in terms of what it addresses. So I think that would be an interesting discussion. And just, is this what everyone thinks we're doing in terms of scope of all of these different types of structures? Go ahead, Aaron.
Yes, I just wanted to say, we've deployed hundreds of shelters in California, utilizing this building code, and it seems to have been pretty successful on that front. From our vantage point, this seems kind of an appropriate type of code to model after. Regarding the declared state of emergency, I would tend to agree that it may not necessarily require a declared state of emergency, but up to the discretion of the local jurisdictions, and at the approval of the local jurisdictions. So localities have control over what's happening in their town.
To that comment, is there precedent I'm trying to think of in the codes where it's appropriate for the code to require a declaration of emergency? I think
You know,
the code doesn't. The code doesn't actually do that. It's
wouldn't
really
think so.
state by state. That's why there's certain reasons for that, and it usually comes from the governor office. So just FYI, it doesn't have that. So
Okay.
So
yeah,
I agree
the
that
things that I have seen from other places generally do not require a declared state of emergency. Code provisions I've seen working through other states.
Okay,
so
go
the,
ahead.
the comment I was going to add in regards to your question, Todd, is essentially there was a House bill that passed a few years back, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, that did basically allow jurisdictions to, in turn, allow cold weather shelters in existing buildings if it was determined to be an emergency. So that's currently how a lot of our ordinances are written, not the code though. The
Right.
ordinance is written in a way to say we can allow these if there's a declared emergency. So whenever it's going to be cold, I have to get my city council to declare a cold weather emergency, and then I can allow them in existing buildings. So I think we're trying to get away from that, basically.
Okay, yeah, I agree. That's what we were looking for. Is that kind of a general consensus with everyone?
Yeah, absolutely. That's
Okay.
exactly what I'm hoping we could do.
And you want to have heartache over that? Heartburn, I should say. Okay. Okay, so then to kind of give us direction here in our last 10 minutes, looking at this list of definitions, is there anything on this list that we think is out of scope of what we're trying to do? Aaron, I assume you fall under I mean, pallet shelters, for example, falls under emergency sleeping cabins.
Yes.
Yep. If you scroll down, you see tents at the very bottom. That
Yeah,
was,
we've had, some places, Seattle puts us in those solid-sided wooden tents. We're not wood, but the thought behind it stands. It's kind of analogous to a tent, but better insulation, better protection from the elements. So not quite a tent, but similar in I guess function, closer to a tent than a permanent building.
okay. Thank you. And a couple things jumped out at me here. I hadn't thought about membrane structure. We've had that topic come up a few times, but it hadn't occurred to me that that would be included here. Um,
So I also saw recreational vehicles.
yeah.
I don't think that's within the scope of what we're trying to accomplish. Um, but I could be wrong. Maybe we want to do that. And then the other thing is in regards to tents, there's already in the 2024 code, there's all the amendments that got added for tents to house humans and give guidance on that. So I don't know if we really need to cover tents here, but if we wanted to be less restrictive than that code section, then I guess we would have to.
What section are you referring to again? You said it, but I just didn't.
It's chapter, I think, well, I don't want to say the chapter 'cause it's not coming to me, but the special construction chapter within the building code. We
Right.
added a lot of amendments this 24 cycle, kind of in regards to the pandemic, which give guidance on how to put up, temporary membrane structures to house humans. So I think that's already covered in my opinion.
Yeah,
Okay. And that's what I remember
like a
John
yurt.
Sue.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
remember yurts are actually a tent basically, and just FYI, it's in the national parks and stuff like that and other places. So I think it does cover it.
So by hearing Tim, tents and membrane structures might not be in our desired scope.
Correct. I think tents, membrane structures, and also recreational vehicles, or even park trailers, are not really in the scope of what we're trying to accomplish with this temporary emergency housing. That's
Okay.
my opinion.
Yeah, because in park trailers and mobile homes, I'm assuming that falls under HUD code. Is that what we're talking about? Manufactured homes also?
Yeah, it's a HUD thing, and yeah, I agree with Tim too. We should take those out.
So anything that falls more under, I don't think this is a correct statement, anything that falls more under that LNI type. Because Aaron, I
Yeah.
assume you probably interact with their LNI quite a bit.
No.
Yeah, we've interacted with them quite a bit. One thing to note there is though manufactured houses only fall under HUD if they're over 400 square foot. So under 400 square foot does not fall under HUD.
Does L&I not touch those?
L&I does, but they're not as a manufactured home.
They're only held to the recreational vehicle standards.
Yes, that's
typical
where that
trade.
recreational vehicle park model
Under 400.
come into play, which are, quick to deploy. You set them down, they're not there permanently. They can be fold back up, pop up. We've all seen different RV and camper things heading down the roads.
Okay, so process elimination here. We're making some progress here. Um, Now the tiny homes, obviously in the IRC, there's new product standard or being developed, ANSI standard. Those are out of scope.
I think so. I mean, they would still be required to comply with the energy code, and I think we're talking about not that for what we're talking about here.
Okay.
I would think that we would not want to remove manufactured homes and park models and stuff as an option, though. If we're looking at emergency situations, we would want as much availability as possible. And like a manufactured home, that's built to a HUD standard. That why would we take that out as an option? It's built to be a permanent dwelling. Meanwhile, we're looking at all sorts of ways, tents and so forth. So I don't think we should eliminate those options, in my opinion.
Okay, let's go a little deeper on that, Michael. Thank you. Is it covered somewhere else, I guess is the question, and therefore it would not be in this scope because it's already addressed somewhere else. Is there something unique about what we're doing that you would need to include? Go ahead.
In my opinion, this comes down to, currently a manufactured home can be set up anywhere in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions. So you could do this. This comes down to us trying to regulate zoning. Yes, we don't want to eliminate those, but if zoning says you can put an RV on there, building code isn't going to touch it anyway. So they can put an RV. We don't need things within the building code to regulate them, is where I was going with that. We don't need things in the building code to regulate manufactured housing because those are required to comply with HUD and be set up to that standard. Those are all things that need to be handled in zoning. So that's why I thought we could minimize this because we don't need to discuss them. They can be set up anywhere if the zoning allowed it. If they allow it in an emergency setup, great.
True.
Okay, I think that's starting to make sense to me. How about anyone else? Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, there's a distinction we've run into a lot is many of these manufactured homes or require permanent foundation per the code. So I think it's important for emergency quick deployment to a little relief on some of those stringent requirements, things that do fall under HUD. We're not over 400 square foot. But some of those emergency things, pouring a permanent foundation can take quite a while during an emergency, particularly. So that I think that's might be something to kind of pay attention to with emergency, just using the existing code sets and regulations for mobile homes.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Okay, Tim, you get the last word today.
Don't need it. So I was just going to point out that the permanent foundations are only required when zoning requires it. Park sets in manufactured home parks is allowed. You don't have to have permanent foundations. It's just our zoning departments everywhere require permanent foundations if you put them in a regular lot. That's where that trigger comes from. So again, it's this trying to regulate zoning, and if zoning still doesn't allow it, then you're stuck anyway.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that for me.
That does help. Okay, we made a little bit of progress. I know this is kind of stop and go, but that's kind of what we decided we were going to do is little sprints here. So is there anything we need to put pen to paper to make progress for next time? And then we will schedule, that'll be the 18th, and we'll schedule Seattle to give us more feedback on their method. Should we just leave it there?
I was thinking so. I mean, the one thought I'm having is, do we want to use the California appendix as a base with some of the modifications we talked about today? I could get it out there and start, but I don't know if that's a little early for that potentially, depending on discussions we might have.
I agree, and maybe let's talk about it tomorrow because at some point somebody's got to put pen to paper, like I say, and either we're going to start crossing out from this document, or we're actually going to, we got to start getting stuff down so to respond to. So on both topics, right? We're not going to just keep going forever. So I think we're making progress, though. Thank you, because I think I'm starting to better understand it, and we'll try to come back in advance, both for next week and the following week. So next week will be, by memory, we do have a meeting, correct? And it'll be on minimum dwelling size, unit size, right? Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Well, I won't carry on. Thank you, everyone, for today. We are adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thanks.